Io sul palco all'ingegner Antonio Arcidiacono, che sarà un milestone di questa giornata. Con Antonio ormai abbiamo una frequentazione preoccupante, più che trentennale, quindi è veramente quindi non riesco a trovare le parole più adatte per presentarlo, se non che un Master of Technology, è direttore del CTO dell'EBU, e oggi ci racconterà un po' qualche esperienza, qualche cosa che può essere di interesse per tutti, e siamo tutti. Mi vado a mettere in platea per sentirti meglio.
Grazie. Grazie Tonio e grazie per l'invito. Profitto dell'intervento del Presidente sul discorso della WRC, perché non è parte della presentazione che faremo, che è centrata sulla produzione live IP, quindi la nuova frontiera della produzione che si sta sviluppando in tutto il mondo. In questo momento ci sono due colleghi che penso si stiano collegando al momento da Ginevra e da Bruxelles sull'argomento. Relativamente alla WRC dico alcune cose. È un momento molto importante quello delle prossime 4 settimane, è un momento molto importante perché si discuterà a Dubai di una questione fondamentale. La questione fondamentale è avere accesso alle frequenze per il broadcasting, e avere accesso per le frequenze per il broadcasting non solo fino al 2031, ma per sempre, perché il broadcasting non solo è una tecnologia che permette di arrivare al 90-92% delle case, ma è la possibilità di utilizzare le leggi della fisica là dove funzionano meglio. Abbiamo tutti centrato lo sviluppo sull'online, abbiamo centrato lo sviluppo della distribuzione sul futuro che deve essere ovviamente online, per la personalizzazione, per la capacità di poter raggiungere e targettare, in un cattivo italiano, l'utente singolo, ma la parte di diffusione è fondamentale e la parte di diffusione deve essere protetta. A Dubai ci saranno discussioni, e ci saranno discussioni che saranno spinte dal chair della sessione della WRC, e su questo argomento specifico il paese ospitante e gli Emirati sono esattamente sulla posizione opposta, cioè loro sono per il co-primary. La parte fondamentale, capisco che la decisione è stata presa a livello europeo e bisogna rispettare la decisione presa a livello europeo su un secondary da ridiscutere nel 2031. È fondamentale che nel 2031 si ridiscuta, perché se per caso il sistema è automatico e nel 2031 automaticamente diventerà coprimario con la parte IMT, a quel punto lì il mercato automaticamente anticiperà il 2031 e questo metterà a repentaglio tutti gli sviluppi ulteriori possibili. Quindi è fondamentale che, se si tiene la posizione del 2031 come compromesso, questa posizione preveda esplicitamente, e conto molto sulla delegazione italiana per difendere questa posizione, il fatto che questo è un momento di ridiscussione e non è un cambiamento automatico. Qualora qualcuno tentasse di andare al cambiamento automatico, chi ha sottoscritto a livello europeo la posizione di secondary ha tutta la libertà di opporsi e ritornare alla posizione di no change, laddove abbiamo per i rappresentanti della regione 1 più del 70% dei paesi come a favore del no change. Quindi è un momento speciale e importante e non bisogna mancare questa situazione. Ecco, questa era giusto un'introduzione per legarmi al discorso precedente. Adesso non so se i miei colleghi si stanno finalmente, sono connessi. Introduco brevemente, perché voglio che loro siano diciamo, i protagonisti. Mi scuso intanto perché avevamo previsto di far venire qui in persona il responsabile della piattaforma Live IP di produzione di Zurigo, della SRF, quindi della parte tedesca del broadcaster svizzero, e purtroppo si è beccato lunedì il Covid ed è a letto e non è potuto venire. Quindi abbiamo dovuto diciamo, rapidamente trovare un'altra soluzione. La soluzione è che il mio collega Ievgen Kostiukevych da Ginevra e il collega della VRT, quindi in Belgio, a Bruxelles, Willem Vermost, faranno una presentazione a distanza e presenteranno i vantaggi dell'evoluzione verso una produzione live IP. Qui non siamo più nel mondo dei cavi verdi, come si dice in questo mondo, e dei BNC, ma siamo nel mondo della possibilità di produrre direttamente sul cloud, la possibilità di sfruttare la virtualizzazione della produzione, la possibilità di integrare gli strumenti diciamo che sono messi a disposizione dal cloud, e quindi utilizzare tutte le applicazioni, tutta la produzione virtuale che si può fare lì e tutti i tools che vengono sviluppati in questo ambito. Domani parlerò ulteriormente di questo nel mio intervento, dell'importanza per esempio delle applicazioni di intelligenza artificiale all'interno della produzione. Ma adesso lascio il terreno adesso vedete che traduco, dopo 35 anni il mio italiano si sta perdendo, e lascio la parola, questo si doveva dire così, ai miei colleghi Ievgen e Willem. E Ievgen, se mi senti, so Ievgen, I'll switch into English because Ievgen speaks English, French, Ukrainian, but not Italian yet. So Ievgen, if you can hear me, please go ahead, floor is yours.
Hello, let's just do a quick room check and raise your hands whoever can hear me, because okay, great. Oh, that's amazing. Beautiful. So for a difference, we actually see the room, but we see your backs. So we will look at you from behind and we will see if you are not paying attention and looking at your phone. So just beware. Yeah, thank you very much for having us. Apologies for not being able to come in person, but the logistics unfortunately prevented us, and it's a big shoes to fit in to present instead of Andreas Lottman, who is a very knowledgeable person in the industry, and the SRG project is massive. But as Antonio has said, we would like to talk to you a little bit about kind of more philosophical questions of why would we consider these technologies, and what actually these technologies like live IP enable us to do that wasn't possible before with our favorite green cables, meaning of course 12G and 3G SDI. So yeah, my name is Ievgen. I'm working in the TNI under Antonio's leadership, overlooking kind of media over IP and cloud technologies. I'm joined by our former colleague, currently a senior manager and brilliant engineer at VRT, and my good friend. I'm happy to be able to say that. He will introduce himself in a second, but basically I just give you a very quick tour about what we will be talking about. And we call this framework that we're going to present the dynamic media facilities. Interestingly, this is not, generally it's not a technical presentation. It's more of a mixture of technology and conceptualism, philosophy, change management, strategic approaches, and we will talk a little bit about history. We will need to give you a historical lessons about several technologies just to understand how we got where we are right now and where do we go from here. Surprisingly, we will also talk about things like pets and cattle and bow ties and containers. So by the end of the presentation, I can promise you that the picture that you currently see on the screen will actually make sense to you. Maybe not at the moment, but we will get there. So let me hand over to Willem to give you a quick overview of how we got to where we are right now in terms of live IP technologies and what it enabled us to do at the moment. So Willem.
Hey, hello, Ievgen, and thank you for the introduction. And also from my side, maybe a quick hand check to see if the audio works. Yes, wonderful. My apologies up front. I don't speak any Italian. There's maybe a few words, and maybe I can try, but don't laugh at me. Ciao a tutti. Voila. So I don't try to do anything more. So very nice of you guys to have us, and I'm always very honored and humble when I'm invited to talk about a topic like this. And then I have the privilege to have worked with EBU for 4 years and to be there at the moment that history of live IP actually started. And it's important to go a little bit over the history, because if we know our history, well, we know what's coming up front to us. And I can start somewhere in 2015. And by any chance, this is the moment I started to work for EBU as well. And at that moment, the JTNM published the reference architecture. Now, JTNM, that's already an abbreviation which I need to explain. I know Antonio started working at EBU and he said, no abbreviations, please, because nobody knows what it's about. So I'll give you 4 more abbreviations. This is a joint task force for networked media between several bodies in the industry. There's the VSF, the Video Services Forum. There's the AMWA, that's the Advanced Media Workflow Association. There's SEMTI, the Society of Motion Pictures and Television Engineers. And of course, the EBU. These 4 organizations...
And I hope you're all taking notes, because there will be a quiz at the end on the abbreviations.
Yeah. It's very important. But these 4 organizations joined forces with one goal, in order to make sure that the industry goes in one direction. That whenever we have IP-based solutions, that you don't have a zillion different options instead of brands which are not compatible with each other. So this is the base assumption how this journey or roadmap did start. So 2015, the reference architecture. And already in 2016, there was the roadmap of networked media open interoperability. And this is an interesting roadmap that actually my previous colleague, Félix Poulain, who worked at EBU, started to draft. And I think on the next slide, there's a small demo already of this roadmap. And now we can easily go into 2017. So 2 years after the reference architecture, the standard, SEMTI ST2110 was officially published. 2110 is a standard, and actually it's a suite of standards. It's several documents consisting out of a general document, something about the video, the audio, the ancillary data, and a few other things. But the core documents were published already in 2017, together with a roadmap and a roadmap update. And the update already stated, like, if we want to have 2110 successful, 2110 is just the data plane. This describes how the pictures and how the audio and the sound will run through the network. But it's just like the old telephony system. If you want to have a phone call with somebody else, you need to dial up somebody. So there's a control plane that needs to come with a data plane. And in this case, this will be NMOS. And this is what the roadmap describes. And the roadmap already described at that moment in time, we have a transport, we have something that says, well, how to control all of this. But all the steps that we're setting right now only make sense. We only reap the full benefits if we go to a cloud-like solution. Cloud-like solution, in our case, means only off-the-shelf servers on which we run applications, and those applications will be media applications that will serve our requirements. 2018, Andreas Latman could have talked about it. The SRF Zurich building and CBC in Montreal, they were constructed. The construction started. And this is, to be honest, why EBU invested so much time into this. There's a lot of broadcasters who have been building new buildings, because all of those buildings have been built in the 60s, and most of them are written off, or as VRT, I can talk about VRT, our building is falling apart with concrete rot. The decorative elements on the facade are falling off. So we need to renew this. And of course, the technology part is a huge percentage of the cost moving into a new building. So at this time, a lot of our members were already looking into the fact, should we stay with SDI or should we move to IP? If we move on further down the road, in 2019, you see that we from the EBU side and the JTNM spend a lot of effort in making sure that maybe the standard was out, the NMOS control plane was out, but all the implementations out there on the market, are they up to speed? Are they ready to be used in our new buildings? So this is why you see a big focus in 2019 on improving and maturity of the solutions. In 2020, well, we needed to step a little bit on the brake. Well, the brake was on physical meetings, and Italy was one of the first where the COVID crisis did hit, and it hit in Italy very hard. So all of you are pretty aware the COVID hit us hard. It was hard to do any physical meetings and to continue with physical testings. Nevertheless, we see that BBC Wales Central Square went on air with the first small studio. CBC Montreal went on air with a small studio. And we took the time to upgrade our documents, the Tech 3371 and the Pyramid document, to the latest state of the art. Moving further down the road in 2021, we still had COVID, and you see that the drive of working from home maybe diminished a little bit. Nevertheless, we kept on upgrading our documents. And 2022, when the COVID pandemic was behind us, or at least the majority part of it, we started to do physical things again. CBC Montreal was fully on air. We published a later version of EBU list. There was another tested program, so we went full speed ahead. And now I can easily say, moving forward to 2023, I said, well, I think we're already there, right? We have our data plane, we have our control plane, we have maturity, we have best practices, even a third version of the pyramid. And this is where I probably need to say to Ievgen, I think we're ready with the media industry. At least the standards, the technology, the things you can buy on the market, we are IT now. But Ievgen, are we really IT now? Do we reap all the benefits yet?
Yeah, thanks, Willem. That's certainly a bold statement to make. We are IT now because, yeah, we are adopting IP technologies and we are benefiting from it. We're using IT grades and data center grade equipment, and we're using protocols that are that have been forever in the industry to do what we call IT technologies. But is it just it? Is it just about the transport? As you can see, we had a long way to go and a long rounds of interoperability testing and a lot of supporting documents to get where we were right now. And certainly we are already getting the benefits of IP. For example, the famous MSG sphere in Las Vegas is a prime example of the benefits of using IP in the backend for transporting uncompressed video. It wouldn't be possible to design that thing with SDI technologies, for better or for worse. But stating that we are IT now, we need to go into another discussion of what it actually means to say we are IT. And I will have to give you another very short, probably another 40 minutes. No, I'll do it quicker. A history tour about how the IT technologies evolved in parallel to how we did media. Because for a while we've been working in a sort of a very privileged but a bubble, right? So we were using our own baseband standards developed specifically and tailored very well to the media applications like SDI, like AS10, MADI, like AS-EBU, AS3 standards. We all know them, we love them, but the IT industry didn't actually have anything like that. They went into common framework from the beginning, and the beginning was the era of monolithic mainframes. I wasn't around while we still had them, but perhaps, not to be ageist, but perhaps some of you still encountered those. I only heard about them and saw some videos on YouTube about how we used to operate, where we had a one central big machine that was purpose built and that had embedded operating system, and usually you would buy it together with your hardware. So for example, HP were producing their own operating system, or Sun Solaris, you would buy a machine that is tightly coupled with its software. It would very much remind me of something like you can buy today, something like a Snell Alchemist, where it's a purpose-built, beautiful machine. The PCB of Alchemist is just the work of engineering marvel, right? But it's tightly coupled together with its software. And you can probably feel where I'm getting with that, because very quickly our compute outgrown the requirements of the storage, and we started thinking about how we can actually use the available resources more efficiently. And this is what led to embracing of the virtualization, where we started chopping our servers into smaller chunks and say, okay, well, actually, I have enough resources to run 2 virtual servers on this one box. And those servers can still be purpose-built, but in a way, we started our first round of decoupling and disaggregation. Even before that, we started getting agnostic operating systems like Windows, like Linux, that didn't care on what hardware they ran. So we decoupled our operating system from our hardware. The application was still running in the operating system, but at least now we can pick and choose whatever motherboards or whatever CPU we would like, and then deploy an operating system for our choice. And we call it white box servers. So now we thought, okay, what does it really have to be a hardware bare metal instance, or can we actually just virtualize it? And the answer was yes, we can. And so this led to a boom of virtualization. That itself led into further discussion of like how granular we can actually go. Can we decouple now the application from the operating system? Because now, okay, if I have a web application, I would need a full-blown operating system to support my database, a full-blown operating system to support my backend logic. This is not something I really want to do, because can I really just package my application in a wrapper and say, okay, well, this is how you would run on an agnostic operating system. And actually, dear operating system, can you please share the resources with this isolated piece of software here and with this isolated piece of software here? And the answer was yes, we totally can do that. And that led to a next evolution in IT technologies, which is the boom of containerization. Now everything is a container, right? So we're doing things in containers that we wouldn't think possible or even meaningful to be containerized. We deploy our essential infrastructures on containers, and this changed the way we think about deploying both the hardware and the software on that applications, because that led to us being able to share our resources with the larger world, thus creating things like public clouds. Public clouds are nothing more than just a huge data center with racks full of equipment, full of servers, with compute and with GPU resources, with a backplane network fabric and a storage that runs your application in an isolated environment. So in a way, this only is possible to design and build something like this with the ultimate disaggregation, where we disaggregate the operating system from the hardware through hypervisors, but also operating system from the application through containers. And maintaining these sorts of applications is a challenge on its own, because now we are separating things like a CPU from a network and a network from storage. So we need to think about it as independent organisms that just work together, but they don't know anything about themselves. And this is And this is what disaggregation is all about. So this only is achievable if we embrace the principle that in the IT industry is called pets versus cattle. Can I see a show of hands who have ever heard about the principle of pets versus cattle? Antonio, from the back, I don't see any raised hands. Antonio has heard, of course, Antonio. Okay, then I will need to do some introductions. So what is a pets versus cattle analogy? Pets represent our traditional servers. So for example, I have 2 cats at home and a snake. Anyone has any pets at home? A show of hands? Come on, people. You don't keep any pets. That's fine. Anyway, so my cats are of a very specific breed. They are Sphinx cats, you know, the bald. They don't have any hair. So they need special diet. They need special care. And if they get sick, I take them to the veterinary and I usually get a hefty bill after it. But essentially, I raise them to back to health, and I develop a custom diet for them. And same for my snake. It lives in a very special, controlled environment. I need to feed the snake with the special food. And if something happens to it, I cannot just go into a pet store and buy a new cat or a new snake. Well, I can, but essentially I treat it as part of my family. It's indispensable for me. It's irreplaceable. And so this is what happens with our devices and our applications that we care deeply for, right? So this is your purpose-built playout server or a DSP processor that you have a custom routine to operate. It has a unique web interface and unique principles of how you configure it. In terms of IT technologies, that would mean that if something goes wrong with my switch, I take a console cable, I go in, I plug into that switch, and I troubleshoot that switch until it goes back online. Or if something happens with my server, I open up my KVM and I start to debug that server until it's back online. But essentially, I need this particular server to be back or this particular switch to be back. And until then, my operation completely stops. On the other hand, if we think about cattle usually has numbers, not the names. If you've been to a farm, you will see that the cows or sheep, they wear this special earrings, not the style like mine, but like this big yellow earrings with just the numbers. And usually you operate them in terms of dozens or even hundreds. And if something happens to that particular cow, unfortunately, as gruesome as it is, you send it to a slaughterhouse and you just get yourself a new one. You just replace it. You don't really treat them. You just get another one. Right? So in a way, from the operation perspective, we are no longer nurturing individual pets. This is not sustainable in the hyperscaler environment. Imagine that you have thousands of servers in your data center, or you have thousands of switches. First of all, those switches and those servers are controlled via automation. You don't run around with a KVM or you don't run around with a console cable. The moment you do that, you failed as a data center, because every single round of automation goes through a rigorous cycle of first testing the configuration, then deploying it in a test environment, and then rolling it out to the production environment, thus completely wiping your custom configuration of a particular switch or a particular server. No, if something happens to your switch, you rip it out, you put in another one, you plug it in, automation kicks in, it's back online, the operation continues, and then you take it back and you troubleshoot or dispose of that switch. Same goes for the server. We don't troubleshoot servers anymore. We just take them out and we replace them. Our workloads shift through a control plane to another server, because essentially the workloads are stateless. They're agnostic. They can work on any hardware software. This is how cloud works. Okay. And by the way, this replacement of things and just getting rid of them, this only should be applied to your hardware. you should not apply this principle to your operating stuff. Those are indisposable. You should really take care of your stuff. Don't just dispose of them. So hopefully this picture now makes a little sense, except for the bow ties. And for by the way, the way we call those servers that you usually still go and tinker with them, we call them special snowflake servers. So for example, here you see a sheep without the bow tie. So this is my special snowflake. You see everyone has a bow tie, but this one doesn't. So it's not conforming to my operational instructions. What does it mean for all of us? The fundamental capacity of the hyperscalers grew so much that we thought, okay, now it's time to experiment with doing media in the cloud. We can try to deploy our vision mixers or our playout facilities in the cloud. And for most cases, it really works. But for other cases, there are some caveats, because remember, containers follow the same principle as hardware. If you know a little bit about Kubernetes, you know that if a container fails, the Kubernetes automation platform destroys that container and spins up another one. It never reports you or gives you the opportunity to troubleshoot a container. No, it kills the container, it purges it with fire, and deploys a new one immediately, because the operation needs to continue. So fundamentally, this is all that allowed us to think, okay, I can do my media production now in the cloud. And this is what also was accelerated incredibly by COVID. Suddenly in 2020, we realized, okay, I cannot really go into my data center with a console cable. I cannot really now play with my vision mixer with buttons. I need it to be available remotely. And the only option would be, can I put it in the cloud? That was our new reality, we found our new ways of working. Some companies embraced it more than others, and a lot of especially media software suppliers became cloud-based overnight, where they basically took their software and deployed it in the cloud. They call it lift and shift. This is not really the way to do that. And also we all got hooked on SaaS, right? So can I deploy my playout as a service? Yes, you can, but then there are some consequences. The engineers and the financial people were ecstatic about the move from CapEx to OpEx. Suddenly, I don't need to procure my equipment. I can just swipe my credit card and have my vision mixer. However, in 2023, the reality started to kick in. And we realized that by swiping my credit card and deploying my vision mixer in the cloud in a GPU-based instance that is built by a minute, may not be a good idea if that vision mixer needs to run 24/7, 365 days per week. The AWS bills that the companies received put them in a state of shock. And so suddenly we started thinking, my CapEx actually outgrew my OpEx. My OpEx, outgrew my CapEx. If I would invest this in a physical vision mixer, I would already pay for it. It would already pay for itself. Right, but it continues ticking. You continue to pay for it, and so we had a big move back to the ground from the cloud. But the benefits from the cloud, things like elasticity, things like being able to spin my applications up and down. If I need a vision mixer right here, right now, I can do it. If I need another playout channel right here, right now, I can do it. I don't need to run 2 years procurement cycle to deploy a new vision mixer. But we also started to understand that some applications are better suited than others, right? And we got hooked to this elasticity and flexibility of the cloud. So we thought, how can we replicate this experience in a more optimal way by blending the resources of on-prem and in the cloud? And now Willem will talk a little bit about what kind of business challenges we faced in these discussions. So Willem.
Now, knowing all of this, well, maybe let's get back into our media facility and to our, daily reality, I would say. And I took the liberty to make a very, very high level workflow diagram, which you see here on the slide, which is the media offering we have, the media production we do, the media delivery we do, and the audience engagement, of course. We need to have relevant offerings, otherwise we don't have any audience engagement. Now, we see that we did a big shift in the last years, and probably in the years still to come, into being maybe online with all our offering. So in Germany, there's something called the Mediathek, which is an online platform for Germany to see all the relevant offerings of WDR, Bayerische Rundfunk, and so forth. At VRT, we built something we called VRT Max. That's our platform. RTBF built their OVO platform. And of course, this is what we didn't have to do in the past. We had antennas and we just broadcasted our media into the air, and the whole transmission was, well, actually for free, so to speak. And now, if we move to the internet, we create a platform. Every bit we put in the internet, we need to pay for. So there's a lot of money being shifted into media delivery, and right so. Otherwise, we don't get to our audiences anymore. But this means that the financial pressure on the rest of the media chain need to be well thought about. The budget doesn't grow. At least at VRT, we didn't have a growing budget, and that's the same for a lot of public broadcasters. The budget does not grow. The budget is shifted into media delivery, so we need to be, and that's our baby here, we need to be very smart about media production. And also we need to be smart about the talent, because it's not just shifting from the one to the other technology. We need to have different talent as well. People need to have the skills to work in this type of new environment. And of course, I hear things as well, the production and all the things we do. We are a company of public value. So sustainability is one of the values we have as well. And sustainability, it does not come for free. So there's a big pressure on the budget. And the one thing we can do is be smart on the media production. Now, in the next slide, I'll try to demystify a little bit the pets versus cattle. And this slide gives you a typical operating room at the broadcaster facility. And this is what everybody knows, right? There are dedicated devices with the special front plates, and there's the orange front plate. You already probably know in the room what brand we're talking about. There's the nice front plate with a lot of buttons, with a lot of color. That's also a specific brand. You can guess already what brand we're talking about. As a result, this means that our engineering department and support department has people up to the box, and it's so special that one support engineer only serves one special type of boxes, meaning the orange boxes, that's one engineer. The boxes with the buttons, that's another engineer. We cannot maintain this. The more we can go to off-the-shelf servers, the more we can go into Google-like data centers, the less we need to spend our money in support engineers being in a room like this. And this is actually the aim of the game. So this is where we need to go. It looks a little bit boring, but actually this is pretty cool. You rip out the server if it fails, you plug in a new one, and the automation will be there to deliver all the pieces of software that needs to be delivered on that specific machine. This alleviates the burden on support resources, and it allows more time, and thus it generates tangible money for the rest of the process. Now, of course, we've been thinking about this for a while, and we thought, well, the network, the compute, the provisioning, the security, these are the things that have been solved in the IT industry. So please don't invent them again. They're there, so they're there to use. And the things we need to care about is, of course, the media functions, because we need to have a vision switcher that can do a wipe, or maybe an audio desk that can do some EQ or compression. Those are media functions. Those functions alone, they don't work. You need to be able to control them. And something we learned from several projects, and actually one of the projects got an EBU TNI award a few years back, was Control Room 42 from the RTBF. That's the French-speaking public television in Belgium. And they did a big test, and they moved out all the operating things like buttons, faders. They moved it all out, and they controlled everything via UIs. Of course, this is a little bit maybe too far-fetched, but this proves that your production can be scalable now. The way a production doesn't scale at this moment, at this very moment, is that we have physical operating systems and physical desks. If you go into a gallery to produce a show, it has a certain size and a certain amount of seats. And this is actually because of the piece of kit that is available within the gallery. If we can make this available via a UI, you can scale down and you can scale up your production. And that's an interesting fact as well. So this is something we propose, a layered system. And if we think about it, that the media function is the heart of our production system, and we look at a little bit the ins and the outputs of such a media functions, we come to all the things we loved in the past: metadata, media transport, control data. There's a zillion different metadata schemas out there. Actually, this is waste for us as media production. We just want one metadata schema, or maybe a few, but a standardized metadata schema. Media transport, there are so many different codecs. All the different camera production companies do have different codecs. Is it interesting for us? No. Actually, we've been putting our focus in the wings of the bow tie, because this diagram represents a bow tie. And the bigger you make the wings of the bow tie, well, the harder the knot in the middle it has to support the wings of the bow tie. So we want to actually shift the paradigm a little bit upside down and say, well, the wings, we don't care about the wings. The thing that creates our value for media production are the media functions. So this is the bow tie and the so-called bow tie diagram that we want to propose. We've been writing all of this into a document, and it's a white paper available for free to download. You can scan the QR code here on the screen, and you will immediately get this white paper. And we will talk about applications built from software media functions, and those media functions run on containers. They can be deployed on the spot, so you have a top of flexibility. And by the way, when you develop these containers without specific functions that you can only get into Azure or only into Amazon or a Google Cloud, you're independent of any cloud provider, meaning you can start to deploy containers that you need to have 24/7 in-house. And whenever you need to scale out for elections or big shows or whatever you need it for, you can scale out to any cloud provider that brings you the best value for money. So that's an important concept here. So Ievgen, maybe there's a small wrap up that you want to do?
Yes, before we go into any questions, I just want to give you a very quick, I think we have still like 2 minutes, a very quick perspective of how you apply this philosophical concept of dynamic media facilities in practice and what it actually means for you, the practical people in the room, and for us, not for us who discuss about philosophical topics, but for actual people who will be working with this in the field. So container itself is, in the best IT practices, is a stateless, agnostic thing, right? It doesn't care on where it runs. It doesn't care how you deploy it. It just is. It just exists. The moment you deploy a container that is stateful, that has a hardware dependency or has a prerequisite of prior knowledge, you failed, and your application will fail. So the reason for us talking about this is that we see that in our industry, the media and entertainment industry, a lot of vendors started to say we deploy containers. We are container based manufacturer. Our stuff runs in containers, and the irony is that you can have these containers from vendor A doing some function, and you will have a stack of servers that support those container ecosystem, and you have vendor B that also does containers, and you have a stack of servers supporting their ecosystem of containers. Those containers will not talk to each other, so you will have a pack of servers and a pack of servers and a bunch of SDI cables going from one server to another. This is not acceptable. Container is an entity that doesn't care where it runs. Why do I need to support specific server base for that particular vendor? What if I want to shift it to the cloud? In the cloud, you cannot have an FPGA accelerator board. You cannot choose if you run on Intel or AMD. You can just deploy a container. So we think that the containers should have an agnostic platform, and this is what we called the dynamic media facility platform, where the wings of the bow tie connect, and the platform exposes a unified API, for example, a media fabric API. What runs underneath? SDI, ST2110, NDI, SRT, RIST. It doesn't care. The container doesn't care, as long as it can send pixels to that API so that the platform can do the work for it. And so this is what we propose for the manufacturers in the industry. We will be having wider discussions in the community and in the industry with the manufacturers to see how we can make it happen. And hopefully the industry will benefit from it, and you will need to maintain only one pack of servers and go into any cloud when you need it and however you need it. So on that note, do we have any questions?
Thank you, Ievgen. Thank you, Willem. Colleagues, questions?
Raise your hands. No questions?
Was a jump into the future that was shocking, maybe?
I am not the right one, because clearly I want to make a project for having all in SDI. Then I'm not the right person for. I still prefer to use SDI, but it's a personal problem.
Ooh,
No.
ooh, we have
joking.
a skeptic, a heretic in the room.
There is a question from.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't really hear the room, so you will need to.
The question is coming through the microphone.
Yeah.
Just.
Hello. Hi. Good afternoon. Actually, I'm coming from the media solution segment, more devoted to the content creation, and you touch on this topic of a cloud, public cloud, private cloud. Actually, this is a big discussion. Seems to be complex because we come from the requirement of a typical productions workflow, and cloud is opening debates every day in our environment about, for instance, the cost of storage. That is a topic that is impacting in what you are showing, the transformation from CapEx to OpEx. The security story, you told that we shouldn't invent because you said it's already there. Nevertheless, we are worried for this content situation, security situation. And the last consideration is that, is the industry considering enough interest the media segment to take care in focusing, optimizing the service for this? So this is in short.
Yeah, thank you.
Amazing questions.
Yeah.
Amazing. Absolutely spot on. Do I have some time to elaborate? And
Go,
I'll invite Willem
Yeah.
to share his thoughts.
Yeah, go.
So we talked storage, security and how the industry perceives the media and entertainment. Let's talk storage. So you all are probably familiar with the Movie Labs Vision 2030, right? The basic principle of Movie Lab Vision 2030 is that the application moves to the data, not the other way around. We all are perfectly aware that the moment you put your archive into AWS, it stays there. It never coming back, right? Because egress cost of the data will prevent you from downloading this archive back to your premises. AWS will give you beautiful rates, and actually it will be free to pipe your archive into their storage, but it is never coming back. And you should be damn sure that you're willing to pay those recurring fees. This principle addresses this by saying you don't have to move your data to the cloud, because containers don't care where they run. And that is essentially well within the Vision 2030 of Movie Labs. You can deploy this container that processes your data on premise. And this is what we're saying. If you need to, you can also move it to the cloud for an overflow, or for example, for some ad hoc acquisition. If you're doing remote production and you acquire media directly to the cloud, you can process it in the cloud using the same workflows that you would deploy on premise. So you would use the same color correction set of containers that builds your color correction pipeline, or your enriching AI-based applications that do automatic face recognition and speech-to-text recognition. You can still run it in the cloud, but you can also deploy those same workflows on premise in your private cloud, or even on a Raspberry Pi, because the container doesn't care. And we're just advocating for this paradigm that the container shouldn't care. The moment your container is tied to a specific functionality that is only provided to you in that particular cloud, that is not a container. That is now a cloud offering, because the container is a stateless, agnostic function that does one thing and one thing only. So there are principles of microservices and principles of containerization that should be followed. And the media API or a control API should not care. So there should be a driver that says, here is the data in S3, and here is the data on a file share, and here is the data on my tape archive. The container should just process the data. So that's talking about storage. Talking about security, containers are there forever since the beginning of, I almost said since the beginning of time. No, the containers are used in the IT industry for a very long time, much longer than we even started thinking about them. Kubernetes is a very robust, very secure, very standard application. And there are very good practices on how to design your containers, how to design your software applications, how to deploy your Kubernetes cluster. And by the way, it's really a waste of your resources to maintain your own Kubernetes cluster. It is much easier to go to something like Red Hat and say, could you please give me a ready-made Kubernetes cluster that will conform to all the necessary security features. But we also need to apply common sense. If you're not using certificates for your authentication, when you go into your web interface of your container no, I shouldn't say web interface of a container. It's actually quite heretical thing to say. But if you don't use SSH encryption, right? If you telnet into your switch, you're essentially giving away the keys to your data center to an outsider. Willem can elaborate on the security. He's done a lot of research and kind of collecting fun facts from the world of media in terms of security. How does the industry perceive media and entertainment? I will be honest with you, not very seriously, because we're a drop in the ocean. So telecom and IT is huge compared to us. Things, for example, like even a pro AV sector is enormously bigger than a traditional broadcast. And although it's part of media and entertainment, it's not part of telecom. So just to give you a perspective, while for a typical building, we would buy, I don't know, 200 switches from someone like Cisco, you would buy maybe, I don't know, 40 spines and then 160 leaves. At the same time, Microsoft will come and buy 20,000 switches for their new region. So the scale is not comparable. And we can only achieve something by doing a collective stance, right? So this is why I'm saying we need to have an alliance, a whole membership standing behind and saying, please design these containers in a best practice. So I should stop ranting and give a word to Willem.
Maybe a small practical example, and I'm talking now private to Ievgen, nobody's hearing our conversation here. So we're testing a production as we speak, and it will be a heartwarming production for some poverty, and it will be around December, around Christmas. So you can have the feeling what it's about. And we have this software-based production in our basement at VRT. And I'm a little bit afraid sending this, shipping this out to the place where it's gonna be to the event. I don't have the exact engineers and that sort of things. So I said, no, I wanna keep it in-house because we have the support here. And then they started to be creative. And it's a part of technology that I don't know anything about, and it's about transmission. Now, what did they came up with? They have transmission dishes. You know, the old style RF point-to-point transmission dishes. And they converted it to an 800...
Oh, you mean the microwave links, the microwave link.
And they converted it to an 800 megabit per second link. And now we've proven that we only have 2 converters. We can convert our video signal into SMPTE ST2110-22 in JPEG XS, low latency encoding. It comes from Bruges, which is, let's say, 100 kilometers away from Brussels, with a low latency into our data center. Remote, we have the web interface to our media functions, and we will do the switching of the video, the layover, and all the graphics. We will do it remote, and everything will happen in our data center here. So today, even if we're not fully in the containerized mode of creating these things, we can already start to see the benefits in moving into this new world. It's really amazing.
Yeah, and speaking about security, there is one particular vendor of a PTP clock that doesn't have authentication on their web interface. How secure is that? We need to sort our stuff out, really, and just apply common sense. And things have been done in that area before us. The key management, the authentication, authorization, availability principles exist. We just need to start applying them. We should stop thinking we are in the bubble. And this is also what it means by saying we are IT now, okay? Then let's act as IT. Let's act as a zero trust environment. Let's remember that the moment it's on the internet, it will be hacked. It's just a matter of time. And we just can make it hotter or not. So hopefully it's in a way answers the question, although I'm not giving any solutions at the moment. So the answer will always be, it depends.
Thank you. Thank you, Ievgen. Thank you, Willem. And I don't know whether there are other questions. If not, I would like to just come with a couple of remarks because you've seen that you need a certain level of competence to enter in this new world. And Ievgen and Willem are typically the new generation of engineers that are able to enter into this, and they master this subject, as you have heard. Mastering this subject is typical of every new transition. When you enter into a new world, you need to become master. It's not enough. You know, I'm old enough to remember when Cisco started selling routers. And I remember people going to do 1 or 2 courses at Cisco, coming back, I know everything about routers. They didn't know anything. I mean, they just knew the 3-4 procedures that they learned from Cisco on how to run this. And when you were asking them to change the minimum detail, they would say, oh, it will never work. I said, no, it could work, but you need to think about it. So this is mastering new technology is important. Another point which is very important is common standard. You've seen the effort that was made at the beginning at SMPTE level with EBU, with the JTNM group of people. This is us, the engineers, at our best. Is when we join forces, we forget about competing from the different companies, and we find a common ground where we can build a new house. This happened with GSM many years ago. This happened with DVB. This is happening in several areas, but we need to do more. Of course, there is an effort to be done there. And then we need to see how to make this compatible at the economical, financial level. We heard it. It's expensive. It's expensive, and when people see the AWS invoice, then they say, ooh, wow, 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 that's really expensive. What kills the cost of these things? Competition. And for competition, you need to be able to switch from one vendor to the other, so to be in a multi-cloud environment. And speaking about security, this idea that with a Kubernetes containerized solution, you can go from one place to the other, of course security is very important. And there may be functions that you want to keep in your building, as Willem was referring to. I mean, it's there, he's using this technology, and this should be switchable from one to the other. This should be easily integrated. But to do this, we need to go together. We need to have the force of creating a media space in which we can force the vendors to be interoperable. We can force the vendors to be having a common layer where we can easily go from one to the other. The elements exist. The architectures exist. What we need is the force of going there with in common. And I wanted to say that this is exactly where we could go with the European media space. If we don't want to be, say, dominated by the big vendors that will decide for us where to go, we need to have them working with us, of course, but we need to stay in the seat of the architect, the one that decides where things are going to happen, here, there, or in another place. And by doing this, you will have competition, you will have pricing that will be reduced, and you will have a better solution. 2110 is going forward in this. If you have been at IBC, you have seen probably there was a demonstration where one iPhone 15 was connecting it directly in IP using 2110 standards. They were cards at few $100s for interfacing into this infrastructure. So the market is going in the right direction. Pricings are going down. It will take time, but this to the enormous advantage of being able of developing new products, new contents. And Ievgen was referring to the Sphere in Vegas. You know, I don't know whether you are familiar with the Sphere in Vegas. It's an enormous sphere with an investment of $2.3 billion. I mean, it's not peanuts. I mean, this is real money. And this is an 18K by 18K spherical screen, let's say, LED wall that is covering you. But the whole nervous system behind it is based on what has been developed with all this standardized, containerized, network-based solution. It was impossible to do with another, say, normal technology from the past. So that's the future. That's where we need to invest. And I'm really thankful to the colleagues from Geneva and from Brussels that have tried to make this simpler for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And thanks